What's it really like to work in the UK? British work culture has its own rhythm, traditions, and some unspoken rules. And in this episode of the English Right Now podcast, we'll be specifically talking about working in an office in the UK. And along the way, we'll teach you at least 10 pieces of vocabulary related to the topic. I say at least because it's a real conversation and anything can happen with my dear friend Rob. Hello!
Hi, Roy. How are you doing? You all right?
You've done it again. I'm very well. I'm very well.
Good.
Yeah, I'm really well. How are you?
Yeah, doing very well. Thanks very much. And
Mm,
this is an interesting topic, something that we've both experienced.
yes. Well, yeah, it is. In fact, we met in an office, didn't we? This is where
We
we
did.
actually became friends.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it's a topic. By the way, that hello thing. If anybody doesn't know, it's Rob and I have this little competition as to see who can make the. It's all about hellos. We do hellos, and sometimes we go up, and sometimes we go down. One time I was quite downbeat, which means a bit like subdued, and then you said, "Roy, come on, raise the hello." So now I'm trying. But yeah, so we're going to talk about the office now. There are a lot of different jobs in the UK. Some of them not in an office. Um, do you prefer working in an office? What about what's your sort of feelings?
Well, I like a mix, actually. It's quite nice to work at home where I am now. You have your own timetable, you can go and grab a cup of coffee, that sort of thing. I quite like the flexibility. Then it's quite nice to be in an office place because it can be quite sociable, can't it? You meet other people.
Yeah,
Obviously, it's not just about talking to friends. You do some work, but it's quite nice to have work colleagues, people you work with around, and yeah, you can have a chat, you can learn from each other, and you can help each other as well. So a mix is what I like.
yeah. Colleagues, as you say, is a word that we use to mean people that we work with, and of course, that whole work from home and kind of hybrid working pattern that started, obviously a few years back, and it's continued now. Now, there's quite a big debate over, businesses. Some businesses want people to be back in the office full time.
Yeah.
Others prefer the hybrid model. You say you prefer the hybrid model.
Mm.
I see the benefits of both. I love it. I like working from home because you can get up and go literally to your desk and then
Yeah.
start working, and you don't have that kind of commute, which is one of our key pieces of vocabulary. Commute is your journey to work. So when we worked together, my commute was quite intense. I used to have to get a. I live on the Isle of Wight, and we were working in London, so my commute. I started at like 5 o'clock in the morning to get there for 8, and it was a bus on the Isle of Wight. Then I had to walk up a pier, catch a ferry, then I'd catch a train, and then I'd catch the tube, and then I'd walk to the office. Quite an intense commute in hindsight.
And then it was
But yeah,
time to come home again.
yeah, pretty much. Jeez, that was a yeah, it was quite an intense commute, but I loved it because I saw the benefit of going into the office, like you say, because it's very,
Yeah.
there is more. It can also be not just social, as you say, but it can be quite collaborative, and it can help creativity to be surrounded by like-minded people.
No, I agree. I agree. I mean, going back to the commute, yeah, I had a commute not as long as yours, but in some ways I enjoyed it because it was a gap, a space between the office and home, so you could chill out for a bit. You talk to other people on the train as well, I guess. But the
Yeah,
downside, the negative side, uh, is the cost, of course, of commuting
yeah,
up to London, and the time. And sometimes, because I had, you have childcare and children to pick up and things like that, there's a stress of having to catch a train, and if the train is cancelled, it throws up all your plans are thrown up in the air, and it can be quite stressful, especially if you have a manager who's very strict on timekeeping, for example.
yeah, yeah, and I think that yeah, I mean, for me, I enjoyed working from home all the time. I really did. I think it was brilliant. But interestingly, now I'm doing this full time. I've actually created a workspace where I go to work. So it's almost like I need a disconnect from the house. So
Yeah.
personally, in hindsight, I think a balance of a couple of days at home, 3 days at home, and maybe 1, 2 days in the office really really can help because it also I think the greatest fear that the bosses, and we're not, not just managers, but we're talking senior bosses have, is that if people work from home, they're not really working or something like that. But
Mm.
I honestly, working from home, I found it was the opposite. I felt I was working harder and sometimes longer because I didn't have the commute to really,
Yes, and
I really enjoyed it.
and also you feel that, I guess, yeah, if you're at home where the manager can't see you, you want to prove that you're not doing any work. You want to prove that you are working hard, and therefore you do a little bit more, I think. Yeah,
Yeah. But
but
today we're kind of focusing on actually working in an office, not work from home. Although you can have your home office, I suppose. I've got one at my home, and ironically, I never use it because now I have a studio space where I record and do most of my work. But most people, when they talk about the office, they refer to it as the 9 to 5. The
mm,
9 to 5. These are kind of core hours, 9 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon. And people sort of, oh, well, how's the 9 to 5? How's that job? It's kind of an informal expression for job, but that's for a job in an office. In my experience, a lot of offices they don't actually do 9 to 5s.
no,
They do
mm,
like 8 4s, 10 6s, 9 35. It can be a mix, but these are kind of the core hours, and you have that lunch break in the middle usually, which is some offices will be half an hour, some offices will be an hour. Um, some people choose to eat at their desk. Do you think that's a
mm.
good thing or a bad thing?
No, it's not a good thing at all. I know sometimes it's necessary because the work you're doing has to get done, and therefore you can't have a break. But otherwise, if you do have a lunch break, I always advise people to take it and
Yeah,
to move away from their desk. Partly because you want a change of environment, partly because it's messy to eat food at your desk. But also, it's again, it's a sociable time. Go away and speak to other people, have lunch with your friends, get outside the building, get some fresh air. Don't just spend the whole 8 hours sitting at your desk. It's not good for your back either, is it?
no, no. And we are talking about British office culture. I think a lot of bosses, the managers. So usually in the UK, in an office in a sort of a bigger company, you'll have the team, of which you may be a team member. And then you'll have what we call a line manager, which is the person responsible for that team. And that line manager reports to a more senior manager who potentially reports to the CEO of a company. So there's a hierarchy. And
Yeah.
usually, as a team member, our dealings are with our line manager. Uh,
Mm,
so we kind of deal with that. And often I find line managers, two things that students often ask me: is it good to work at your desk? In my experience, a lot of line managers actually encourage you to work away. That it's not something that they like to see, probably because they think you're either bad at timekeeping or something like that. Plus, they want you to be refreshed. So
mm,
they see that. A lot of my line managers actually encourage you to leave the building or
mm,
or the desk to get a break. And the other thing is overworking. A lot of students ask me, is it good to work more hours? If you're due to finish at 6, how will a manager feel if you're working at 7 or 8 at night? In my experience, a lot of managers aren't, that isn't the most positive thing. Not
no.
because you're putting in extra effort, but because they're worried that your timekeeping isn't good,
Mm,
that you're maybe working because you're not coping with the time. That was
yes.
my
Yes.
experience. Yeah.
Well, I'd say a good line manager wants to manage your time, make sure
Yeah.
you're working efficiently, but also your health and the kind of work you're doing it properly. So they should be able to manage that. Again, it depends on your workplace and it depends on the culture of the organization. There are places where people think by working late and being seen to stay late and doing extra work, they'll get a promotion or a pay rise or something like that.
Yeah.
And then other workers who don't work so late might feel a little bit kind of inferior and thinking, "Oh no, I'm not working hard enough."
Yeah.
But I'd say a proper workplace with a proper line manager will manage your time, manage your workload, and if there is a problem, you can discuss it, can't you?
Yeah. I mean, we have something as well. This is a key piece of vocabulary, but this is something, this is not a key piece of vocabulary. Sorry. It's not something we included, but it's something we talk about: quiet quitting. Quiet
Mm,
quitting. This is kind of a thing that's quite commonly talked about in British culture. Quiet quitting is this idea when a person decides to only do exactly what they have to do and nothing more. They don't go the extra mile. So quiet
mm,
quitting is almost like where we say, right, I'm going to do my job to the letter. This is an expression, to the letter, nothing more than that, and that is my job. And then they
mm,
see their hours, and it's referred to as quiet quitting. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing to do one's job, and not break your back, kind of doing extra things that you don't necessarily need to do, where there's no kind of guarantee of a reward.
No,
Um,
that's right.
uh, Going
But
the
also,
extra mile is also an expression, isn't go do more than expected, go the extra mile. It's fine in
yeah,
a social environment, or if there is potential of a reward or something like this, but yeah, you
yeah.
should never
I mean,
feel obliged.
another expression I was going to say was work to rule. Some people work to rule, so they literally do exactly like you said, do exactly what the rules say. Do this amount of
Yeah.
work, and then go home. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but I suppose I say in some workplace cultures, if you're seen to do extra work, harder work, more work, then maybe you get on, you go up the ladder quicker.
Yeah. Yeah, I and this is, and you've also got to kind of judge based on what you see. That's one thing. It's always when I talk about the unwritten rules of a place, the dress code, things like that. Always
Mm,
observe your colleagues, observe how they're acting, get a
yeah,
feel for the places, get an understanding of it, and then you'll know these kind of unspoken rules that everybody expects. Should you be 5 minutes early for the thing? Is it okay to have multiple tea breaks through the day? Tea
mm,
break is a key piece of vocabulary. This is important in UK office. A lot of people every now and then they'll pop off and make themselves a cup of tea. They'll have maybe 5 minutes, ten
yeah,
minutes, and they'll have a quick cup of tea with a colleague. The tea break. It's
yeah.
not a lunch. It's not lunch. It's not tea break. What I think there's a lot of benefits. How many cups of tea did you used to do? Do you normally? Yeah, let's not talk numbers. But how many cups of tea do you have during a day?
Quite a few, quite a few. I can't sit still for long, so I can't sit at my desk for a long time anyway. So I do like to go and have a cup of tea. But sometimes, it's not just being lazy or trying to
No.
skive off, not do your work. Um, it's a chance to catch up with colleagues again, maybe share an idea
Mm,
or something like that over a cup of tea,
yeah.
rather than do everything at your desk. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's also, you talk about a chance to catch up and a chance to collaborate and all things like that. But also, I think it's a chance to, again, refresh yourself a little bit. Maybe work is a little bit hectic. Maybe work is a bit intense. Maybe you feel a bit stressed. It gives you just 5 minutes to breathe and come back a bit more composed.
mm,
And we should do a whole lesson on how to make the perfect cup of tea. We've done
yes,
it before,
definitely.
but like now with the vocabulary and everything like this, I think we should definitely talk about perfect cups of tea. One thing that I love about the office, and it bleeds into a question I get asked, is office banter. So
Mm,
banter is kind of a friendly, joking conversation with a little bit of teasing, quite humorous. It's a very British thing. Well, it's really important to British culture. Banter.
yeah.
This idea we can gently tease each other when we know we're comfortable, and it happens in the office quite a bit, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. It does. And this can make the workplace or the office, a great place to work. If you can have some fun banter, it makes the day go quicker and it makes work more enjoyable, doesn't it?
Yeah, and maybe like somebody's like, "Oh, thanks for being on time, pal." Maybe a few minutes late. This kind of gentle teasing. You know that I'm being sarcastic. I'm joking with you, but it's all about understanding that it's a level of humor. And I find some workplaces are hilarious to work in, and that makes you
Yes.
feel much better. And over time, you get your kind of we have an expression: your friends, and then your best friend, and sometimes we refer to as your best friend as your bestie, and some people say your office bestie.
Mhm.
When it's a person, a friend, a work friend, rather than a out of work friend, and then you sort of talk about your office bestie. You can have some real kind of banter with
Mm.
your office bestie.
And of course, a
Um,
good place for banter is traditionally around the water cooler, isn't it? The water cooler moment
yes,
you have.
yeah, yeah, like this. I mean, water cooler. There's this whole kind of I don't know that many places with a specific area for a water cooler anymore. This is very 1980s, 1990s thing that is just stuck around in people's memories. This idea of like a kind of water fountain where you could just fill up your glass, or a water cooler, like just this water in a bottle that you could fill up, and everybody would sort of gossip around it. Oh, have you heard about Martin?
Mm.
This kind of thing.
Mm.
Most places now they have this kind of little kitchen with maybe a
Yeah.
water cooler or just a tap
Yeah.
in there, but it's like
It's
it's
another
this
way of
idea of an
saying a
area.
tea. Yeah, it's another way of saying a tea break, like we were saying earlier. It's when you
Yeah,
step away from your desk to then have a chat to somebody, and this is
yeah.
where you can have your banter, can't you?
Banter or gossip. Not
Hmm.
gonna lie, gossip. Some people are like, "Oh my goodness, have you heard about Martin and Sharon? You know, these kind of things. Or sometimes it's you know, if a colleague is not feeling great, it's a chance to vent. Vent is where we kind of release
Mm.
this negative emotion, like, oh my goodness, the client, you know, you should never say it directly, but this is a very passive aggressive British
Yes,
thing that they will vent to their colleague, but then go back to the desk and be quite
professional
composed
again. Be
again.
professional again. Yes.
Um, but you've got to be careful. Never vent in earshot when people can hear that you shouldn't let them hear. One question I get asked a lot about is swearing in the British
Mm.
office. Should you do it? Should you not?
Yeah, this is a tricky one. But of course, I think first of all, you need to know your colleagues, your work colleagues, and
Yeah,
understand what their level of swearing is, whether they accept it or not, because obviously some people can get very offended. So I think you need to understand the people you work with before you swear. It's not, I think it's not out of the question. Doesn't mean you can't swear, but I think you need to know who you're swearing with and
yeah,
yeah, who's in earshot, who can hear. You might not want the manager to
yeah.
hear, maybe. So
I
yeah.
mean, I mean, many years ago, in when the dinosaurs, as I say, roamed the earth, a manager once said to me, "Roy, you don't really swear much, do you?" And I was like, "No." And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, you know.
No, no.
I personally don't swear in the office. I don't. I do maybe sometimes in social situations swear, and not in front of children either. I think that's another thing. I would never swear in front necessarily of a senior manager, but a lot of kind of managers and colleagues, they will swear. Maybe not the worst of the worst of the worst words, but I've heard some Fs
Mm,
out there, and I think it's more like it's got to be within, as you say, an understood, mutually understood environment,
mm.
um, and things like this. It's so, and the same with banter. You got to know who you're doing it with, otherwise
Yeah.
it doesn't land very well. But
Yes.
we've talked a lot about this kind of thing and you know, the kind of general culture. Now let's talk about one thing that I think is really important, and we talk about key pieces of vocabulary: work-life balance. We talk about
Mm,
this a lot.
we do.
How important is work-life balance?
It's very important, and it's become more important, I think, over the years in my working life. There's definitely been more of a change towards more work-life balance. Before, it was work came first,
Yeah,
did your work, and then any time left was for life, enjoying your life. But there's much more discussion about it. There's much more understanding about it, I think. Organizations now, I think, understand it. There's even some laws to give you certain rights to a sort of
yeah.
work-life balance, whether it's giving you more time off for childcare or time to work at home or flexible working, flexible hours. So I think people understand the concept of a work-life balance more. And I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I do. I think when we were kids, a lot of our generation, they very traditionally the father worked very long hours, and potentially the mother during early years was more at home. My parents both went back to work
Mm.
as a young, and I spent a lot of time with my godmother. But a lot of children, like they very rarely saw their parents, particularly the father.
Yeah.
Maybe the generation before the children, the father was always at work, and it, like you say, it was kind of encouraged that it was a good thing. And I think over time, the last generation or so, it's become like, well, work-life balance is good because if your employee is mentally sort of more balanced, they're going to be happier and they're going to be better and more efficient. It's
Mm.
one thing I always ask about in interviews: what is the work? What is your take on? You know, how important for you is work-life balance for your
Yeah.
colleagues, for your employees? Um, because for me,
Yeah.
it's massive. Yeah,
Yeah, you are allowed to request it now, aren't you? Actually,
yeah,
you can actually say to your manager, they might not accept it, but you can say, I want to work 4 days a week, or I want to do a 6 hour day or something. You can actually ask your manager. I say it
yeah.
doesn't mean you'll necessarily get it,
No.
but it is allowed. You can ask. Yeah.
And so yeah, it's called compressed hours, isn't it? Where you do like maybe 4 days a week of 10 hours, and then you can have a
Yeah.
Friday off or one day a week off.
Yeah.
Like you say, there's no guarantees, and another thing as well. These days, a lot of people chop and change, which means change very rapidly. Their jobs, they change jobs.
Mm.
In the past, maybe during my father's sort of generation or the generation before, we had a thing called a job for life,
Yeah.
which basically meant people stayed in one place for their entire life,
Yes.
which is terrifying, really.
They may have moved around the organization, as you said, not the
Yeah.
same job, but within the same company. Yeah, it was a almost guaranteed job for life up until you retired. Yeah.
And one thing as well, you in the UK, you get what we call annual leave as well to
Hmm.
sort of help that there. This is a key piece of vocabulary. Your annual leave is basically your holidays for year. So many workplaces will give you sort of 20, 25 days a year off that you can choose, and then you basically you put in a request to your manager normally to say, can I have X, Y, and Z day off?
Hmm.
Um, I know this might sound a bit strange to you, but having worked in some countries, your annual leave isn't doesn't if you take a week off, your weekend is not counted towards your annual leave. So if you get 25 days off and you go Monday to Friday, Saturday and Sunday are automatically off anyway. Some countries they will include the weekend as kind of a 1 week off. Of some cultures, that's what I believe I've heard.
Hmm.
And so, you can strategically plan your annual leave to maximize your time off with using the least number of days, can't you? Because we have something called bank holidays.
Bank holidays. Yeah, they're the equivalent of a public holiday, basically. We call them bank
Yeah.
holidays because traditionally the banks closed on those days. They were given a day off. And so everything else closed. So, yeah, we get how many do we get? About 9 or 10 bank holidays over the year. Christmas
Now
Day
I
is one.
work for myself. I've got no idea.
Doesn't matter, does it?
People
No.
are like, enjoy the bank holiday. I'm like, probably not. I do what I want. I
Yeah, no.
work all the
Good.
time.
There's a good point. When you're self-employed,
Yeah.
you take time off when you need to or when you can
Yeah.
afford it. But when you are employed by a company, yeah, you get bank holidays off as standard. And then going back to leave, yeah, I think the UK were fairly generous. You get a
Yeah.
minimum of 20 days off, but most companies give you more. I think, I think in America, don't they only get 2 weeks leave a year paid?
Something, and they can build it up over the years. I think. Yeah, there
Right.
is something like that, and it's or that in some cultures you can't take a holiday within your first year of working.
Wow. And of course,
Wow.
it's worth mentioning annual leave. You still get paid. This is the great thing. You get
Yeah.
time off work and you get paid. So that's good.
So
And the same with the public holidays or the bank holidays. You
yeah,
automatically get a day off, but you do get paid for those days
and
off.
and and sometimes we don't go to our manager to request time off. We can go to HR.
Hmm.
And HR is basically human resources, which do all the people management. They deal with people when they're sick. They deal with people when they're unhappy. Sometimes, if you have a problem with your line manager, you go to HR. You should
Yes.
probably speak to your line manager first and maybe their manager, but potentially trying to address the situation with your manager
Hmm.
first. But if you've got an issue or a problem or a need, HR can help as well.
Hmm.
HR, yeah, and they do a lot of the hiring and the interviewing and the kind of that sort of thing as well, don't they?
Yeah. Issuing contracts and things like that. But I was going to say, talking about being sick, here's another good thing if you're employed by an organization. If you're ill, obviously you take the day off work, but you still get paid for it, don't you?
Yeah.
Not the same if you're self-employed, you work for yourself. But yeah,
No.
if you're employed by an organization, then yeah, you get paid sick leave.
Yes. And yeah, a lot of self-employed people like myself, they make this joke. I can't afford to be sick. Because obviously if you're sick, you don't work, and that's it. And I think for the first week, you can sign yourself off as sick. So you can
Hmm.
basically say, I am sick and I can't come in. You don't need to provide any doctor's notes or anything like this for the first, is it 7 days or 5 days anyway?
Hmm.
But if it carries on, that's when you're going to need to go to the doctors and get a doctor's note or a sick note, which is basically just a key piece of vocabulary. It's a letter from the doctor to say, yes, he or she is sick with this. They need this much time off. And that's when you submit it to your manager or HR and so on, so on.
Hmm.
Sick note. Yeah. And there is another side that we need to talk about the sick note thing as well, isn't there? Because some people, because they can, sometimes you can accuse somebody of pulling a sickie.
Hmm.
And some people do. They basically call in, phone their manager, and say, "I'm really, really sick. I can't come in today," but they're not actually sick. They're pulling a sickie. I've got a
Hmm.
whole thought about this, but it's usually a kind of thing with the banter at the oh, have you heard about have you heard about Rob? He's pulling a sickie again. I'm going to use you because I'm not going to use another person's name just in case. But obviously, you never did. You never
No,
did.
never,
Um,
never done that.
but people do what we call pull a sickie because they're not feeling like they want to go to work or they've got other things to do.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, there
what
could be, mental health issues here. People get depressed or
yeah,
fed up. Yeah, middle of the winter. There's that famous day in January, I think. Is it Blue Monday or something, where
yeah,
it's the most depressing day of the year, and people just can't get out of bed. They have a
yeah,
duvet day, a day under the duvet, so they just call in sick,
yeah.
sickie. Or in extreme circumstances, somebody wants to go to a music concert or something like that. They haven't got
Or a
enough. They've used,
hangover. Let's not.
or they've got a hangover. They've used all their annual leave up anyway. So the best thing to do, the easiest thing to do, is ring up and say, "I'm sick," and you take a sickie.
Yeah.
Very
If
naughty.
you get caught though, oh, it can
Mm,
be. First of all, it can be serious consequences with your manager, but also it's just really embarrassing. I imagine.
mm,
Um,
yeah,
but yeah, I agree with you. I think I always said that very rarely do people actually pull a sickie because there's often, if a person doesn't feel like they want to go to work, then yeah, all right, it may not be the flu or something like this, but it may be a mental health issue, depression. They're not enjoying the job, something at the job is making them sad,
yeah,
or they're not, so there's a multiple different reasons. So yeah, it's a very flippant term to say, oh, he's pulling a sickie again. Oh, goodness.
mm,
Sometimes it's pressure and stress and something that should be addressed with HR or potentially your
yeah.
line manager.
Oh, your
Another
manager.
way of saying that, though, is when we deliberately dodge or avoid work or school, it is to skive. This is a slang term, to skive.
Yeah.
Oh, he's skiving, or we sometimes say skive off. Did you ever skive off school?
Never. I love
No, I
school,
didn't.
so no, I wouldn't want to. Why would I
Yeah,
want to skive off? I like to
yeah,
learn.
yeah. I never did, but there's all some. There are all some kids that do.
Mm, mm.
You know.
Um,
Uh,
One thing we haven't mentioned, Roy, is about in the workplace is about what we're going to wear to work.
Oh, goodness me. I think, yeah. I did sort of talk vaguely about this, the dress. So it's called the dress code, the office
Yeah,
dress code. The office dress code, it depends on the office. It
yeah,
really does. And that's one thing I said about, like, when you go for your interview, observe, be aware of what it's like. But some places are kind of smart cash, which is basically smart casual, maybe a shirt, maybe a trouser, but not the full suit. Some places are very formal.
mm.
You should always ask during your interview, shouldn't you?
Yes. You
Um,
should find out. 'Cause it can be quite embarrassing if you turn up in a suit to work and everyone's wearing jeans, and vice versa.
yeah,
I guess the more public-facing kind of work, where you're meeting the public all the time, people tend to wear a suit or a tie.
yeah,
But in more relaxed places, when we worked in the media, it was more
yes.
casual, scruffy even.
I wouldn't say scruffy. Yeah, yeah, scruffy is a negative adjective to say sort of unkempt, not very, possibly you're looking at my beard right now.
Yeah.
I've got an appointment booked at the hairdressers. But yeah, no, I think like really casual clothes. Some officers they wear. I was going to say, you said it's embarrassing if somebody wears a suit on their first day and everybody's in jeans and a t-shirt. I'd say it's better to be embarrassed like that than
Tend
the
to
other way
work.
around. If you turn up in a t-shirt and jeans and everyone's in suits, oh, that's not going to go well.
Yes.
So it's better to go the wrong way and be slightly more formal
Yeah.
than to go completely the opposite.
Yeah.
But of course, we also, we have dress down Friday as well, though. That's one thing
Mm,
I used to like.
mm,
So in some offices, they wear Monday to Thursday, they wear suits and ties, and then on Friday you can wear anything you want, jeans and a t-shirt. Although a lot of places say not football shirts,
mm.
probably because of rivalries and things like
Rivalry,
this.
yes. Could
Yeah,
cause a
who
fight.
do you support? Who's your team? But yeah, a lot of people look forward to that, and that dress down Friday basically means that then people go out on a Friday night after
Mm.
work to
Yeah.
socialize, and I think it can be a quite a good thing.
And of course, yeah, you say Friday you can go off socializing. We knock off, maybe that's a
Yeah,
informal expression.
knock off early if the boss allows you to. Knock off is very
Yes.
informal, isn't it? To mean to leave and stop your job. I'm just going to knock off early today.
Yeah.
But it's usually if the boss says, "I tell you what, everybody, let's finish at 4 today and let's all go down the pub." Sometimes your manager will offer to take you to the pub for a pint, should never get drunk, though, in my experience, in front of your colleagues or managers, because you still have to go back on Monday and face the music,
Yeah, that's right.
face the reality, face the
That's right.
responsibility. But in this lesson, we've talked a lot about work culture. I think in another lesson, another podcast, we're going to have to talk about interviews in the UK,
Ooh, yeah.
things like this. But for today, I think we've just covered a lot. If you've got any questions about this, please do let us know. And of course, if you fancy supporting this podcast, you can always buy Rob or myself a cup of tea. There is a link in the description below. Look at you. That's a coffee,
Already
Rob.
got one.
I know what that is. It's a coffee. But you can always do that for us. But for me today, I just want to say thank you very much for watching this episode. Rob, thank you for joining me. I'll see you in the next one.
Pleasure as always. Yeah. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.